All right, let's go to the AFC North. Um, who won that division? It was. Did Cincinnati win that division last year, or was it the
I,
Steelers?
I I believe it was Cincinnati, and then
The Steelers beat
the
them in the playoffs.
right because they lost Andy Dalton and AJ Green for the playoff game.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So, where do you want to start with this? Let's start. I mean, let's start with Cincinnati. Uh,
Okay,
so they're getting Andy Dalton back. It could have been a whole different story if he was able to play in that game,
right.
as well as AJ Green. Uh, but still, they have a very good team and a very balanced attack. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the the most important part of the Bengals and the part that's ultimately going to put them into that next category. I mean, Marvin Lewis every year is fighting for his job because he has not won in the playoffs. I mean, that's ultimately the deciding factor. They have the offense in place with the weapons with AJ Green and Andy Dalton, and they also have Tyler. If Tyler Eifert can stay healthy, he's definitely a good tight end, and they have a great defense. The question for me is going to be how do they balance Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill? Is one of those guys going to take off and be the hot hand? Are they going to play it with Jeremy Hill being the downhill runner and Gio Bernard just out in space catching passes? But one of those guys really needs to take off for them to take this next level. And that's ultimately what they're missing is a run game. They have everything else in place to be
So
successful.
you don't think Jeremy Hill is starter quality running back?
No, no, no. I believe he is a starter. I believe he has the talent
Okay.
to do so. He's just been very. He had a really really good year. What was it, 2 years ago? And then last year they just kind of took the whole running game to me just took a step back
Okay.
for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think that they need to get back to the way that they operated 2 years ago in order to get that first playoff win for Marvin Lewis. Otherwise, next year we're going to be possibly talking about a new head coach for the Cincinnati Bengals.
I mean, they haven't won a playoff game since the '90s, I think.
I believe
Um,
it's them and Detroit have the longest
yeah,
streak.
and Marvin Lewis has been a coach for the Bengals since 2003, and has not won a single playoff game for them. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. But it seems like Mike Brown, the GM and owner, must really like him. Has a really good relationship. But I mean, here's the deal. I think the Bengals. I really like the Bengals because they keep adding pieces. Now, especially on defense. Now, Vontez Burfict is going to be suspended at the beginning of the season for that hit on Antonio Brown, but they brought in a veteran linebacker, Carlos Dansby, who I really like.
Yeah.
Another guy I really liked was William Jackson III. Unfortunately, he got hurt, so he's probably going to miss at least half the season, which is a big bummer for them. But they also re-signed Adam Pac-Man Jones at cornerback, who's, I mean, done an amazing improvement on his career with Cincinnati. And going to offense, their wide receiver, Boyd, is it?
Tyler Boyd
Tyler Boyd.
from Pittsburgh.
I'm a big fan of Tyler Boyd.
Yes.
I think that was a great second round pick, especially in a first round where a lot of wide receivers went off the board. They were able to get Boyd in the second round. I think he's going to be a great replacement for Sanu and Marvin Jones, who both left in free agency. Tyler Eifert's going to be missing some time at the beginning of the year, unfortunately. But I like the Bengals. I really like Andy Dalton. I don't think Andy Dalton gets enough credit. And he really had a good breakout year. But honestly, I think the Steelers will be a very, very difficult opponent.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I have just based off of what you said, I have two things on the Bengals. Tyler Boyd, to me, I will say this right now. Everybody expected a lot out of Mohamed Sanu, and was it Marvin Jones, the one that ultimately went to Detroit?
Yes.
They had a big. They were expecting a lot out of those two guys. Over the last couple of years, and both have kind of seemed to fall short of what expectation was. Tyler Boyd will be better than both of them. Now, obviously, he's
I
not going to
agree.
get like both of those statistics. He's not going to replace both of their
No,
statistics
no, no,
together. But Tyler Boyd, by year 3, will have a better career than the both of them. I mean, that's just simple.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I have is I will say Andy Dalton right now is going to be the next generation's Tony Romo. Tony Romo, we see what Dallas is without Tony Romo and how good Dallas is with him. Tony Romo has not gotten the credit that he has deserved for the things that he has done in Dallas, and everybody looks at him because of the injuries, because of the failures in the playoffs. Andy Dalton is going to be looked at the same way. He is never going to get the credit that he absolutely deserves. And he's going to fall, unfortunately, into that same boat as Tony Romo unless they can win a playoff game.
And I can't picture Andy Dalton with any other team, really just because of the hair. It was a perfect fit.
It was.
He
The
looks
red,
great.
what is he? The red, what did they call him? What was his nickname that
Is
they
it
were
the
calling
Red
him?
Rocket?
Maybe. I thought that was it, but I'm not sure if that.
I can't remember. But anyways, I mentioned Steelers being a really tough opponent. I feel like if I wasn't a Packers fan, I'd be a Steelers fan. Because I really like the Steelers. I really like Ben Roethlisberger. And Antonio Brown. Man, this guy is good. Le'Veon Bell is going to be suspended for the first 3 games, but they have D'Angelo Williams, who proved to be a very good back. I mean, he had one of his best seasons last year. And as for their defense, it's not the Palomalu era defense, but they're still adding pieces. They drafted Artie Burns in the first round, a cornerback. Who else they got that? Ryan Shazier. I really like Ryan Shazier. Didn't have a great rookie year, but a lot of people expecting him to make that leap. And they have one of the best coaches in the league in Mike Tomlin. What are your thoughts on the black and yellow?
I think, was it today or yesterday? They got a very big, good piece of news that James Harrison will not be suspended.
You think that's a big deal for them?
The reason I say it is it's not necessarily what he offers them on the field at this day and age.
Yeah.
But what he offers them in terms of defensive leadership and what.
Okay, no, I can get behind that. I can get behind that. Yeah.
Definitely in terms of the locker room, he is a guy that they definitely can use as a veteran presence. A guy who's been there, done that. Arguably one of the biggest plays in Super Bowl history, the pick 6 against the Arizona Cardinals right before the halftime. But yeah, as you mentioned, Pittsburgh is kind of rebuilding and winning at the same time. They're bringing in a lot of new faces, a lot of new young kids who are able to step in and play right away. Antonio Brown is incredible. I mean, if he's not your number one, I mean, Julio Jones, it's a horse apiece between those two guys. It's the best receiver in pro football right now. But
guy just got a raise too.
Yeah. He jumped $4 million, and he's worth every bit of it.
He's still a bargain.
What Pittsburgh has been able to do and put into place is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And I'm going to say here, before we even go, Pittsburgh, to me, I think wins the division this year. I think that they have more answers than questions, so Cincinnati, to me, has more questions than answers.
I like them both. But, we're saying so many good things about the Steelers and the Bengals, which is not very good for the Baltimore Ravens. Not long ago, just won a Super Bowl, but now it's not looking so good. They ended their season off the worst way possible with Joe Flacco tearing his ACL. Steve Smith got hurt earlier in the year. Ben Watson, their new tight end, just got hurt, ruptured his Achilles. He's out. And as for their defense, Terrell Suggs is coming off an injury. Who else do they got on their defense?
C.J. Mosley.
Oh, C.J. Mosley. Yep.
Very good linebacker. Jimmy Smith needs to stay healthy at the cornerback spot.
It's not much.
I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, Steve Smith is coming off an injury as well. I think, was it Dennis Pitta who
Dennis Pitta
still with the hip injury and missing so much time last year. That's what it's going to come down to for the Baltimore Ravens is staying healthy. They're kind of entering this youth movement too and trying to still compete with what they consider, I will say that in quotations, what they consider to be an elite quarterback in Joe Flacco. It's just they're in a weird position of transition. I mean, they're better. They're in a better position than the Cleveland Browns. I mean, that's not hard to do, but I mean, Baltimore is a good 3-year rebuild away from getting back into contention with this tough division.
I just feel like ever since they won this Super Bowl, they have not done anything to really, get better and go in a different direction, because that's inevitable. You have to go in a new direction. Yeah, they drafted C.J. Mosley, and yeah, I mean, I think Joe Flacco is a good quarterback, a guy who can be your starting quarterback for 10 or so years, but the running back situation has been terrible. Even before the whole Ray Rice situation happened, Ray Rice was coming off a terrible, terrible season. And Justin Forsett, I don't think... if you thought Justin Forsett was going to have another great year like he did in 2014, no, it wasn't. It was not going to happen. It's just not. So, there's a lot of questions that aren't being answered with Baltimore, and like I said, they're in one of the toughest divisions in the league with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. I have them only winning 4 games this year.
The only pardon that I will give the Baltimore Ravens for last season, I shouldn't say last season, I should say the last couple of seasons. That pardon is officially over after this year, but Ray Lewis is arguably the best middle linebacker of my lifetime that I have seen to date. Ed Reed is arguably one of the best safeties that I have ever seen play in my lifetime. And Terrell Suggs will be one of the better, if not elite, defensive end, outside linebacker hybrids. To lose those 3 guys, Suggs being the injury and Ed Reed and Ray Lewis to retirement are huge blows.
I mean, but Ray Lewis in his last season, remember, he was hurt for most of the year.
Yep, and he tore his bicep
and played
in the Super Bowl. I understand that, but when you lose guys of that multitude and of that, I guess of that significance to how great those guys were, no matter who stepped on the field after them, we were going to think that it's a downgrade. And granted, it was, because their overall record has shown that. But I think until this point now, I mean, it's hard to replace those guys. Year after year, one of them going each year. It's hard to bounce back from losing those 3 pieces. But like you said, you have to understand, heading in a new direction, you got to have players who are going to play and help you compete.
We're going to move on. I don't want to move on because our next team is the Cleveland Browns.
Can we skip this one?
Yeah. I will say one thing. I love their coach. I love Hugh Jackson. To me, he was the number 1 head coaching candidate this offseason. But man, why did he have to go to Cleveland? I mean, their starting quarterback is Robert Griffin III. I'm sure Cleveland Brown fans are cautiously optimistic about him, even though he's had an okay preseason. And in week 5, or starting week 5, he's going to have his former college receiver, Josh Gordon, who I really like. But besides that, there's not much here.
Right, yeah. I mean, I guess the most common thing that I'm seeing this offseason is completions from RG3 to Tyrell Pryor. What that tells you right there, just in that sentence, RG3 to Terrell Pryor, sums up about how good their season.
I believe he's going by Terrell Pryor Sr. now.
Oh, he must have had a baby a couple of months ago to change that. That seems to be the common trend with NFL players these days. But anyway, yeah, Cleveland is outside of Joe Thomas. They're about as consistent as inconsistent can get. I mean, they're consistently inconsistent. That's about the only way to sum this whole situation up. Is RG3 the answer? I don't know. I mean, they've had a different quarterback every year since they've been back in the league, it seems like. Same with head coach. But yeah, Josh Gordon coming back is great for them. He's an absolute stud. They desperately need him. They desperately need anything and anybody that can put a helmet on right now. But yeah, they're definitely going to be at the bottom of the division once again.
Okay, so we're done with that. You said the Steelers are going to win the division. I'm going to guess the Bengals are second.
Yes.
And Ravens third. And Cleveland last. So we have the same order once again.
Great minds think alike.